Hello, everyone. I'm Makaylah.
And I'm Macy, and we're talking about mercury toxicity and exposure from mercury. So, what is mercury? It is the only metal that is liquid around room temperature. It is usually a gray or silver color. The atomic number on the periodic table for mercury is 80, and its symbol is Hg. It can become a vapor at room temperature, which is around 20 degrees Celsius. When it becomes a vapor, it is colorless, odorless, and very toxic. Whenever it is a liquid still, it has high cohesive qualities. So whenever it is disturbed, it just forms smaller droplets. The nickname for mercury is quicksilver, but it was formerly named after the Roman messenger god Mercury. Okay, so here we have some visuals for you for Quicksilver, which is from the Marvel series, also known as Pietro Maximoff. And the god of Mercury, also known as Hermes, is on the right. So there are three different types of mercury. There's elemental, inorganic, and organic mercury. The elemental form is its pure form, which is also lipid soluble. This can be found in thermometers, electrical switches, fluorescent light bulbs, and dental fillings. The inorganic mercury is usually a compounded chemical, which is water soluble. This can be found in batteries, certain types of disinfectants, and in chemistry labs. The organic form is found in living organisms. This can be found in coal fumes, fish that have eaten methyl mercury, and older antiseptics that were used before.
Some of the ways that you can get mercury poisoning include inhaling mercury vapor, eating fish or seafood that naturally contain large amounts of organic mercury, swallowing mercury, or just straight up touching liquid mercury. The effects that this has on the body includes it deteriorates the nervous system, impairs hearing, speech, vision, and gait. It can cause involuntary muscle movements. It corrodes the skin and mucous membranes, and it causes chewing and swallowing to become difficult. So there's not actually a cure for mercury poisoning, and treatment for it may involve decontamination, but the best way to not get mercury poisoning is to limit your exposure to the metal. One of the medicines that was often used back in the day that involved mercury was bichloride of mercury. The chemical name for this was mercury 2 chloride, or HgCl2. It was often referred to as the mean-tempered cousin of sodium chloride. It's very corrosive and irritating and could loosen teeth and cause numerous bleeding ulcers in the stomach. It was often used in bedbug killers, laxatives, antiseptics, and diuretics. Doctors prescribed it for chronic bacterial infections such as syphilis. Another medicine that mercury was used in was calomel, which was also called dimercury chloride or mercury 1 chloride or Hg2Cl2. It was a white, tasteless, odorless compound, and it was less toxic than bichloride of mercury, but it was still able to linger in the tissues, mainly in the kidneys. And fun fact, this is what Lewis and Clark took on their expedition to help them relieve constipation.
A study was conducted in New York City that examined the levels of lead, mercury, and arsenic in health remedies that were used between 2010 and 2019. The products they examined were traditional herbal medicines to dietary supplements. In dietary supplements, the median concentration was 0.02 parts per million, with the maximum concentration being 0.2 parts per million. In traditional herbal medicines, it's 0.1 for the median and 10 for the maximum. Traditional Chinese medicines, it's 0.3 for the median and 200 for the maximum. In Raja Shastra, it had a whopping 2,445 for the median and 220,000 for the maximum. Raja Shastra is a traditional Hindu medicine that is prepared with metal, mineral, or gem compounds, and this study investigated the adult and child daily exposures when taking this medicine. Adult cases reached up to 35,000 micrograms per day and child cases reaching 24,000. The U.S. Pharmacopoeia permissible daily exposure limits are 30 micrograms per day. Another study examined the exposure of mercury from electronic waste, which is the disposal of electrical and electronic equipment, or EEE. Types of EEE that contain mercury are fluorescent lights, switches, batteries, phones, and computers. Dismantling or burning of EEE for recycling purposes can release mercury into the environment. In soil and sediment, it was found mg per kg that the median was 0.1 and the mean was 5.71. In water, for mg per kg, it was found 0.05 for the median and 0.05 for the mean. And food and animals, it was found to be 0.02 for the median and the mean was 3.17. In the air, the median was 0.04 and the mean was 0.05. However, analysis of blood, urine, and hair samples did show low exposure to residents in the studied areas. During the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, scientists noticed that people were washing their hands more often, and with more hand washing, they would have drier hands, so then they would use hand creams more often in order to moisturize. A study examined the level of mercury from these hand creams and based them on specific categories. So for B products, the median in micrograms per kg was found to be 6.087. For a carrying effect in the hand cream, it was 11.058. Distributed from China, it was 8.568. And packages up to 150 mils was 5.932. And the higher priced products were found to be 4.657.
A final study examined the relationship between the concentration of mercury in an individual's hair and the exposure of methylmercury from fish in different lakes in Canada. The study found that bigger fish had higher mercury levels, however metabolic excretion rates varied among ethnicities. This study found that people in the Lake St. Pierre region had a daily exposure in micrograms per kilogram per day of 0.068. And the levels of mercury found in the hair in parts per million were 0.83. People in the Abitibi region had a daily exposure of 0.139, and the levels in the hair were 1.2. And then people in the Labrador region had a daily exposure of 0.342, and then the levels in the hair were 0.4. This picture shows a condensed version of how mercury concentrations travel up the food chain as smaller fish get eaten by bigger fish. Scientists say that it's okay to eat salmon, pollock, and oyster anytime we want. They also say that trout and canned tuna consumption should be limited to a few times a week, and then consumption of shark, pike, albacore, and halibut should be limited to a few times a month. Pictured below are two images that show levels of mercury emissions. On the left, this graph shows that the highest amount of mercury emissions come from artisanal and small-scale gold mining. This amount comes in at just over 700 metric tons. The next highest amount of mercury emissions come from coal combustion, which is just under 500 metric tons. On the right is a world map of the amount of mercury emissions across the globe. The highest amount of emissions can be found in Asia, specifically in India, China, and Japan, with high amounts also being found in South America and Africa.
Here are the references we used to get the information for this presentation.
And here is how we split up the responsibilities.
Thanks for tuning in!